All right. Looks like a few people are rolling in. We're at the top of the hour, so would love to get started. Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar presented by CIID and featuring the Mississippi Department of Education's Deborah Donovan. It's winter here where I'm presenting from in the Northeast. I'm spring hopeful, and I look about and I see signs of that approaching spring. And today we're also marking a time of change and progress in our own community. So we're here to do a little bit of a recap and a celebration looking forward. Without further ado, we have a lot of content to cover today. I'd like to introduce you to our webinar by reviewing our agenda and introducing you to our presenting team. Today we'll begin with an introduction and then reflect on the success that SEAs have had using Generate to create and submit files since 2016-17. And as we turn towards shaping the future of Generate, we'll spend time reflecting on what you have built, streamlining IDA data processes to promote data quality and foster collaboration between IDEA and IT SLDS teams. And this is the core strength that has allowed our community to grow and sustain itself and has prepared us to launch into the open source community. We'll have time to understand why and how, and also look into some demonstration and tutorial. And as I mentioned, hear some firsthand experience from Deborah Donovan on her work in the open source community. So I'm joined today by CIID Deputy Director Emily Rang, CIID Solutions Architect Nathan Clinton, and the lead of CIID's BI work group, Christina MacDonald. And might have mentioned before, I'm Dan Mello, the lead of Targeted and Universal Technical Assistance at CIID. Deborah Donovan has agreed to share her perspective today, so just wanted to say thank you for joining us. We thought she'd be the perfect person to demonstrate the important impact of Part B participation in this community, given her current responsibilities and her former experience as a Part B data manager. She's leading her SCA in an ambitious scope of work, producing files through Generate, and has involved her Part B team to improve communication, gain valuable insight, and improve results for her SEA. So we're going to do a kind of a brief retrospective as we launch forward here, checking out SEA success by the numbers. The number of SEAs using Generate to prepare and submit files over time has grown, of course, and we wanted to reflect as a group on the 2016-2017 year when we submitted, one state stepped forward to pilot 3 files through Generate, and we're grateful to have a small start and reflect that each of you has made an investment since then to build systemic capacity to integrate and report EDFacts data. The growth required your investment and persistence to build capacity over time, and this year we see 15 SEAs who have matched or submitted files through Generate. So we've got, following along on this visual graphic, just taking a look at how our community has grown over time. And by the numbers on the next slide, just highlighting that for the 23-24 submission, we observed SEAs implement Generate to prepare and submit 36 IDEA files. States are marching forward toward the goal of integrated systems, taking on non-IDEA files as well for a total of 46 EDFacts files active for submission. It's exciting to reflect on those numbers, the investments that you made, and the changes we've observed in SEAs, the challenges understood and overcome. However, it's also important to reflect on impact. And in meeting the standards of high quality reporting, you're promoting and supporting oversight for approximately, by the child count numbers, 1.6 million students with disabilities receiving the supports that they're entitled to. So hats off to this community. The work that you're doing is valued and important. And since not all of us spend time on the program side, I just wanted to reflect briefly that these are students in every classroom setting and at all grade levels in every type of community across our collection of SEAs. These are students who have learning differences and are supported nationally to promote positive outcomes. And we're documenting, measuring, and reporting on this IDEA data, which is in turn used to promote accountability in all of the required domains critical to educational outcomes. So while we're celebrating the successful systemic change that you're creating in your IT systems, we're also focused on the impact that this means for students and their families. I would like to turn it now to our Deputy Director, Emily Rang, to talk about some of those practices that are transformed. Emily?
Thanks, Dan. And I'm going to let our PowerPoint here catch up for a second. So just reflecting on some of those areas and content that Dan spoke about. These are familiar to many of you who have worked over the years on various Generate files with CIID. So go ahead and go to that integration slide. Yeah, thanks, Travis. And the next one. So those of you who have worked with CIID before, and as we think about and reflect on kind of the core principles of CIID, we support the best practices in data governance, data standards, and efficient use of state resources, kind of with this lens of people, systems, and processes. And, that's really what our work revolves around, and the efforts that you all have put forward over the years to sort of be in this position with the number of files that have been submitted, high quality data. States involved with CIID have worked really hard to improve that data quality, even with the new EDPass reporting system that came on board, all while learning and leveraging those common education data standards as part of this process. We really integration, some of the successes really are focused around enhanced data accuracy. So the information about the educational experience of the students Dan was talking about, is reflected accurately in the data that's produced from states who leverage the Generate tool and the Common Education Data Standards. Hopefully provides more of a focus on strategic tasks, right? So that's the process piece. Creating a way to create transparency, leveraging those data standards, and being able to focus on the tasks that are upcoming rather than maybe responding to things that you were not anticipating, and improved operational effectiveness, improvements for states in how they operate the creation of these data from the collection through to the reporting. And really shifting, so some examples, shifting data quality checks to the start of the process. In EDPass, I think that one large change over the last few years has really created a huge opportunity for states involved with CIID and with Generate to leverage Generate to support that shift and be proactively and strategically prepared for those EDFacts submissions in a different way. So you don't have to just take my word for it. On the next few slides, I get the opportunity to share some quotes from some of our states. So Vermont, one of our CIID intensive TA states, Vermont's Generate work has involved digging deep into our data processes and systems. It's been incredibly beneficial to work with CIID on building towards a shared confidence in our data validation and integration practices. Again, I love the word shared confidence. I think that really stands out to me in this quote, and certainly appreciate the efforts that all states have put forward into Generate. Go to the next one. Helping to eliminate the single point of failure in one EDFacts resource. I think any of us who have worked in states have all been there at some point. And this quote continues, "We have been able to bring in more resources and increase the understanding of the EDFacts collection process. We need to move away from the consuming legacy process." This quote speaks to me in the context of both increasing understanding, this building of community that we'll continue to talk about, and again, a state basically saying that they're moving away from a more consuming legacy process, thereby assuming that they're finding efficiencies in the leverage of Generate. The use of Generate tools to debug and troubleshoot. So some of the newer features of Generate have been a game changer in comparing to our legacy data. So not even necessarily focused on the submission components yet, but in that matching process, in that validation process, part of the skill building for teams at states, leveraging some newer tools based on essentially feedback from you all, right? As CIID has had the opportunity to engage with states in our intensive TA activities over the years, we've learned from you the things that are helpful and been able to thankfully respond in some ways to create new debugging tools to help you all feel more confident and have resources that you need within the system to do the work. And then finally, the Generate's automation features have significantly reduced the need for the manual input of data, thereby decreasing the potential for human error and consistencies. I think that this inconsistencies. Something that has happened, again, as anyone who's involved in state data collection or validation and verification and preparation, we've all been in that space where, again, leveraging repeatable processes and the common systems to be able to support the reduction in having folks individually having to do manual manipulations to data, obviously just creates an opportunity for error. So very appreciative of kind of this recognition that the systems and the process component really help support this quality and accuracy of the information, and Generate has reflected in that tool. So next, I'm going to talk a little bit about the opportunity ahead and the fostering collaboration between IDEA and IT SLDS teams. So any of you who have heard me speak maybe at a webinar or another opportunity before, I very much feel strongly that one of the core principles of CIID is building upon this collaboration and this community, right? I will have the opportunity to turn this over to Nathan in a minute, and you'll get to hear from him about Generate's move to the open source community. And I want to pause for a minute to just really have you all think about the value of this information, generate information in the open source community, the code, the bug tickets, the enhancement requests, the value that can bring to build upon this idea of strong collaboration between your IT teams and program areas. So your IDEA staff. This provides new ways to enhance teamwork and communication and opportunities to continue to build and expand your CEDS use and awareness and alignment, not only within your own organization, but also with across other states. I'll give a brief example. We had a very I think valuable Generate governance group meeting earlier this week last week regarding the way that Generate was standardly producing one of the files. And in listening to the conversations between those states, the opportunities and the value that they found in being able to hear what other states are doing, our move for Generate into the open source community provides another avenue for continuing those discussions, those breakthroughs, and those understandings across states. So I encourage you to be thoughtful of that as I turn it over to Nathan Clinton to hear more about Generate in the open source community and how to use it.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to start by kind of talking about the principles of what it means to be an open source solution, because that's really these principles are our driving factor for making the tool open source. We know that we are a community of users, and as Emily was saying, that collaboration really is a core component of open source software, right? The ability to connect with one another, build upon each other's ideas, to really define what we want these tools to do. How do we interpret the file specs? What is it that we want generate to produce? So that collaboration is really a foundational component of open source software, absolutely for Generate, but really on for any open source solution. Participation is another foundational component. Now that we have the ability for you to see and download and change the code, we are now able to all work towards a better tool. Right? So, CIID has been carrying all the development work and producing the software, but now that that code is out there and freely accessible, others can contribute codes, bug fixes, new features, and we are able to build the solution together to collaborate on the actual production of the software. Transparency is really kind of at the pinnacle of this. A lot of the work before now had been done by CIID, and you weren't necessarily able to see all the code and all the work and all the testing that was going into producing the software. But now that we're able to log all the tickets, the issues, the feature enhancements, plus all the code changes that are kind of going through the pipeline, you're all able to see exactly what this tool is doing down to the finest detail. The ultimate goal of open source software is working software, right? All of these are leading towards having a solution that does what you as a community need it to do. That is ultimately what we are all trying to accomplish, right? Is have a piece of software that is able to produce high quality EDFacts submission files that is comparable and as accurate and high quality as possible, so that we're able to affect policy and funding changes at the highest level. We can go to the next slide. I'd just like to give you an idea of what the flow is like for software development as it is now an open source solution. This will likely look familiar if you've been at all involved in software development, but now that we're working in a more collaborative environment, there are more actors than there have been before. So CIID obviously is going to play still a major role in the development and the continued support, the release process of versions of Generate. But as bugs and feature enhancements are identified, those will come into our system, the ticketing system, writing up a work description so that we know, okay, maybe you're working on a file spec and you ran into a particular issue with how the data was being aggregated. You can just describe what you're seeing, the specific rules and scenarios, submit that ticket. And then once that ticket has been submitted, it is available for everyone else to see as well. So, if another state is working on the same file, and it's good to be aware of the potential issues ahead of time, so you can kind of go into the production of your file spec and see what issues may be there already, but also being able to see the very fine details of that and being able to come up with a solution to that problem. Like we're actually finding a way to code around the particular issues. Once we have a good work description, finding volunteers. Obviously, CIID will take on a lot of work, but if there are state development teams that are able to pick up tickets, that is awesome. The larger the team, the more we're able to accomplish. Once we have volunteers, then we can really kind of work out a solution. What is the work plan going to be to code the fix, code the enhancement, and get it into a release? With that plan, we then start the development cycle. The development and testing is really kind of the core of this work. That's where we're going to spend most of our time. The development can be done by most. We do have automated testing that will do full end-to-end testing of the flow of data. But obviously, like, testing to make sure the user interface works, a lot of that is still kind of manual. CIID definitely participates in the testing, and the code review, which is the next component of this. Making sure that if whoever created and submitted code changes, that that code, when we're not introducing any new issues, that it's secure, and it also just kind of upholds the standards of the system, and that it's doing what we intended to do. With that change, we can incorporate that into the next release, and proceed to documentation, so that the folks that are using the tool, when they get the next version, they're able to understand what those changes mean and how to use them. And then we proceed to our next public release. So CIID obviously will continue to work with assigning the tickets, right? Acting as kind of the facilitator for the collaboration. We'll continue to do the code reviews, to testing, security reviews, quality assurance, and we have all the infrastructure in place to continue to do the releases. So those are where you'll see CIID really kind of taking charge to ensure that the facilitation of this process moves forward smoothly. So as community members, if you identify any bugs or any improvements that you'd like to contribute to the community, CIID has a few areas where you can kind of begin that process. At the strategic level, we have the G3 group, the Generate Governance group. That's for more strategic changes, like, okay, there's some large guiding changes that maybe we would like to submit. CIID TA, obviously CIID TA works with a lot of states. You likely have representatives from CIID that are working with you down, to help you submit your file specs. Those teams are a good place to take your bug reports to, or your code improvement reports to. And then there's the Discord. So Discord is a place where you can go and chat with the rest of the community. If you have an idea or a question about the interpretation of file specs and how Generate interprets those file specs, that's a good place to go to talk with your peers and with the CIID team. So it's an open discussion, and we're able to talk about any number of levels of topics. With your if you have a bug or a future request that you'd like that kind of makes it through that process, then you can then take that out to GitHub issues, and we'll do a little demo of how to get out there. GitHub issues is really our primary tracking and managing area. So it's a very simple ticketing system, and we like to put everything out there so that, again, we're being transparent about what the tool is doing and what we want to do with our development efforts. If you are actually able to contribute code, we have a process through which you can do that. It's a common technique called a pull request. So something that on the developers would understand, but it allows you to actually make code changes and submit them to the open source community, and have those folded into the tool. Again, the Generate team will coordinate a lot of the the back end and the facilitation of that whole process. So I'd like to just show you really quickly, when you get to the Generate GitHub site, how you can go about actually submitting a ticket. So when you land on the Generate GitHub site, this is what you're going to see, and it's very oriented towards the code side of this. So don't be scared. Up at the top left-hand side, there is a link for issues. You just click on that link there, and that'll take you to the next page, where we have the full list of all of the open active tickets. This is just an example of a few of the tickets we have that have been submitted through the open source community to date. And we hope to see further increased participation here. CIID will be taking a lot of tickets because we have a ticketing system that we've been using up till now. We're going to be transitioning those tickets out to the open source community so that you're able to see a lot more of the what's been going on, the things we've been tracking, over time. To create a new ticket, you click the new issue button up on the top right-hand side, that green button, and that will load up a page where it asks for a title and a description of either your bug or your enhancement. We'll soon be releasing templates for this page, so it'll provide you with prompts for specific information. Asking if you ran into a bug, what is it how did you what were the circumstances that created that bug, so that we're able to reproduce it. All the details that we need essentially to write the code to either resolve that bug or to create the enhancement in the solution. And that's really all you have to enter in order to submit a ticket to the community. From there, if we can go to the next slide, you can see just an example of one ticket, what it looks like. We have, the main title, and as much the template will fill in the middle, but also there's a mechanism to comment on tickets. So if someone has submitted a ticket and you will have additional information, or you're saying, oh, we run into this issue as well, or even this is really important to us, we would love to see this new feature. Any feedback, any comments that you have, you can leave those on those tickets as well. CIID too, or any of the developers will absolutely be communicating back to the community through these ticket comments as well. All right. I think there have been some questions coming through, but I believe we'll take those at the end. And in the meanwhile, I'll hand it over to Christina to talk about Part B program staff leadership.
Thank you. So we've been taking a lot of time talking about the technical aspects of what it means to be engaged in this next generation for Generate and the open source community. And I want to kind of take us back and look at it from a little bit of a programmatic perspective and talk about our Part B program staff and what role they have and what they can contribute to this process, because really our Part B staff have the real capacity to make sure that the system remains relevant and meaningful and sustainable in the broader landscape of our education data. So just to be clear, when I'm talking about Part B program staff, I am taking that broader view. I'm looking at your Part B data managers, of course, but also your special education directors, your content matter experts, your subject matter experts, members of the monitoring TA teams and communication teams as well. So I'm really taking that broad data lens. And often when we talk about data system integration, those program staff are a little bit on the sidelines because there's a lot of technical aspects that have to go into putting these systems together. But even though that technical stuff isn't part of their scope, they have a lot to contribute to the overall process, really beginning with their insight into what is going on. So first and foremost, they bring an insight into the broader overarching data collection and data system that surround Generate and the CIID's data warehouse. And by that, I'm really referring to the resources, the policies, the governance, and the internal and external factors that surround and influence and support the collection and the use of that data broadly. They understand the context of that data collection, so they know what's being collected, by whom, and the governance and practical factors that impact the collection itself and the integrity of that collection. And they also understand the purpose or the why behind the data collection. And they understand those underlying data questions that the collections are trying to answer. And in some cases, they even understand the history and the political factors that went into shaping those data collections and why they're structured the way that they are. They know the data actors, so they're familiar with who's entering the data and how those people understand the data that they're collecting. and how close they are to the actual event or activity to which they're documenting. So, for example, is it being documented by a special education teacher? Is it being documented by the local SPED director? Or is it being documented by the part-time secretary who comes in 3 days a week to enter data? They also understand who's using the data and what it's being used for beyond EDFacts reporting. So is it part of the annual performance report? Is it being used for progress monitoring, continuous improvement, accountability or funding efforts, policy change, or something else? Part B staff are also aware of external data sources that can be used to help validate the data. And they can use that in combination with the 618 data in order to meet other state, federal, or constituency reporting outside of the EDFacts submissions. And they're familiar with what other programs such as Title I, ELL are collecting and how they're using their data as well. So their familiarity with the purpose and the data questions behind the 618 collections makes them a really great resource for interpreting those file specifications and helping to determine the appropriate source for the data given its intent. They understand the context and the data and helps them spot some issues with integrity or some of the gaps in their data. And this insight helps them understand how those standardized data definitions are understood and applied in the field across different programs, which can help improve some of the communication with your state and local staff. So for example, in my state, I was both the data manager and the 619 or preschool special education coordinator. And because I had that dual role, I was privy to the data processing side, but I also knew what was going on with our general supervision and monitoring activities. And there was data there that was not part of our SLDS. And in having those conversations with preschool coordinators and having access to that classroom observation data, I was able to look at our preschool enrollment counts and just immediately spot where it was off, that the numbers had gaps and that there were inaccuracies and inconsistencies. And even more than that, I was even able to identify the cause behind it. I could tell which school districts were only reporting the children that were engaged in their school-based classrooms. I could tell which ones were only reporting as their preschool special ed students and not including the regular ed kids who were being tuitioned into those classrooms. So I had a lot of context that I could bring to that validation process that was outside of the data that was available through the SLDS. And because of that, we were able to really kick off some really meaningful governance conversations around what it meant for preschool enrollment and how we define that. So that insight was really, really valuable to our department as a whole, and really being able to suggest small changes that had a profound impact, not only for our EDFacts reporting, but for how that data was used beyond EDFacts. Next slide, please. The other thing that our Part B's data staff bring is a variety of perspective. So when we're talking about our staff, they fulfill a whole bunch of different roles. So you've got your data managers, but you also have your indicator leads who work directly with that performance and compliance data that's being submitted for special education. You have subject matter experts such as preschool, secondary transition, assessment, all of those folks. You have folks who are doing monitoring and general supervision and administrative tasks. So they have a very different lens on the data and how it's being used. And those different perspectives help them understand what is needed from the data and how which data are needed for different purposes. So in terms of, what data is being used for the SPPAPR, that's the annual performance report, for other state or federal reporting, for sharing data with various community partners and interested parties, for funding or improvement efforts, as well as for doing monitoring and compliance activities around LEA determinations and designing professional development and technical assistance, and for policy and research. So really, they're the ones who kind of know what happens after the EDFacts data becomes submitted, because that's when it becomes official and it really begins to be used. Next slide, please. Thank you. Another real valuable quality that our Part B staff bring is they are critical partners. They partner not only internally with our development and our data teams, but they have some really strong partnerships across the department and with other state, federal, and community leadership. So these partnerships often extend across state lines and include cross-state peer networks and collaborative work. So that makes them a really great resource for identifying opportunities for integrating resources and collaborating with other programs on similar or related data. They have a familiarity with how those collections and reporting occurs in other states and how changes to that will impact a variety of different programs. So these connections mean that they're tapped into the national and political conversations about data, which can help provide a little bit of an insider's track into the potential changes that are coming for data collections. And this advanced knowledge can help states really be poised and proactive for change, rather than having to scramble and react when changes do come down the pike. A really good example of this is the recently announced changes for race and ethnicity collections that just came out a couple of weeks ago. This has been a conversation on the national stage for a couple of years now, and your Part B staff have been very much a part of that conversation. So they've had a sense of what has been in the pipeline for this for a while. Next slide. So really what I'm trying to say is necessity is the mother of invention. So because your Part B staff understand and frequently live around the needs of how this data is being collected and used, and they have those different perspectives and connections, they really are able to leverage that to inform decision-making, to help connect those resources across programs, and really to be able to come up with those new, even minuscule ideas that can make a huge difference when it comes to data processing and data reporting. So and the other piece is that they have the connections to the decision makers and the resources, including staffing and funding resources, that are ultimately going to sustain this in your organization. So they have that ability to really support the work that you all as a team are trying to do, and to make sure that it doesn't go away on you when you're dealing with competing priorities. So I really do invite you to think about what role your staff currently play in the process. How are you maximizing their contribution? And where might you be able to kind of shore it up or expand your system's capacity to innovate and sustain this work? So if you're a Part B staff member, I always try to get that word data in there, because we all are working with it, even if it's not in our titles. So if you're a Part B staff member, there's a lot that you can be doing to really engage in and sustain this work. And some of what I'm going to talk about can be done by more than just Part B staff, or involves more than just Part B staff, but I really want you to kind of think about how Part B staff can be involved in this. And one of the big things is to really collaborate around systemic data governance and incorporate that programmatic perspective and insight and relationships to have a more cohesive and responsive system that recognizes the interconnection of the data needs, and the reporting that happens across programs. So kind of looking at how and when are we coming together, and how do we identify and communicate changes between our individual programs, not only internally and collectively, but with the field and our other collaborative partners and interested parties. There's also a little bit of knowledge development. Oh, go back one. I'm going to be here for a little bit. There's a lot we can do. So we can work on building our own knowledge and capacity around the components to effective data systems. So by that, again, I'm not just talking software, I'm talking about overarching data systems. So thinking about the purpose and the vision for that system, the governance, the engagement of your interested parties and collaborative partners, the systems design and development, data analysis and use, and sustainability, and making sure that those those elements are defined, and making sure that everyone is at the table who should have a voice in this, and how familiar those players are with their roles in this, and making sure that they're able to be an active voice. They can also work to continue to build relationships within the special education and their technical teams, as well as across programs and across states. So thinking about this open source community, really being able to leverage their opportunities to work with other states. And I'll tell you, when we go to conferences, we do this. We often make each other show each other our data systems. So really leveraging those opportunities to figure out how other folks are approaching this, how are they generating their reports, what data are they using to do it, and then how are they using, those 618 submissions to really meet the needs within their states. And another place, and really we saw Emily doing this earlier, is to really champion the work and celebrate success. So often we get caught up in the day-to-day weeds of our work, and systems changes come along and they help us out, but we don't pause to really stop and think about just how much they help us, and we don't take the time to really champion that and acknowledge it. So for our staff to really think about, how are you using the data and how's the system improved it? How much more effective are you? How much time are you saving? How many data errors have you been able to surface and, improve your quality of your data over this process, and being able to celebrate that, but also champion it to those who make decisions around where those resources go and what needs to be supported, to really be able to say that this is a benefit to our work. And that's an important place where they can have a strong voice. Okay, Travis, now I'll let you move. So a lot of that is the internal work, but there's also an opportunity for them to be really strong contributors in this open source community. One of them is just sharing their insight in that community itself. So, really having a role for Part B data managers to monitor that open source community when they're getting ready to work on those EDFacts submission files. Look at what new insights and changes or other information have been shared regarding file creation, share what they have learned and know about what's going on. Look at the challenges that have been identified by other states. How are those states addressing those challenges? Review the Getbook updates and provide feedback on the clarity and the approachability of the language so that it can be understood and used effectively and accurately by all users. Looking at what can be added or restated to ensure data quality in those Getbook guides and texts. Part B staff can also be really strong participants on that Discord server, really using it as an opportunity to share ideas for systems improvements and be able to collaborate across states around what those improvements could look like and how they would interact with their own individual state contexts and their state needs. And they can work with each other to identify and clarify what resources they have available to contribute to the development of solutions for these issues that they are experiencing. And that Discord server is something that is currently under construction. We've been using it very, very much for the technical aspects up to now, but the value for that programmatic voice in there to talk about what the potential innovations and possibilities are with the system is really there. And we would love to hear the voice for Part B staff on what exactly that could look like and how to make that easier to interact with from your perspective. So if that's something you're interested in, or if you have someone on your team who you think would be really, really good at that, please reach out to us, because this is really a great place for folks to be able to say, hey, if this only did this, it would solve so many problems. That really is, a great option and functionality of that Discord server. So really, definitely, we're looking forward to having you guys take advantage of that. Okay. So with that, I am going to take you from the realm of the theoretical and hand you off to Deborah, who's going to talk to you about what this has been looking like in practice in Mississippi. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. So, Mississippi is in the midst of a very large system modernization. So my role within the department is as the lead on that system modernization project. And we are building a new student information system from the ground up that is based on CEDS. So you'll see that I sit in the IT and data staff in this diagram that's listed here. And in Mississippi, I just wanted to point this out to start off with, because I know different states are organized different ways. All technical roles in Mississippi are in our IT shop. So like anyone who is works with the data on a technical level, for the most part sits inside the IT office and not like in our program offices. So our IDEA staff, our Part B data manager is in a program office, but when it comes to the technical implementation, all of those staff, are kind of together in one office. So building a student information system that's built off of CEDS, of course, gave us great opportunity to leverage Generate for our federal reporting, since it is also built on CEDS. We started our Generate implementation as a state several years before we started the system modernization effort. And that gave us a great opportunity to get familiar with CDS, both on a conceptual level, a data element level, data definitions and standards, as well as an insight into how the technical side of CDS is implemented. So it was, for us, a great training ground for some of our staff. And of course, because of the assistance that was available through CIID for the Generate work, we focused on special education data to start off with that Generate implementation. So as we were working through our system modernization, just to kind of walk you through this graphic here, you see IT staff and IDEA staff on the left-hand side that's wrapped in a box with data governance. But I really want to point out something that Christina said, that you need systemic data governance, or it's very beneficial to have systemic data governance. So really think of data governance, and we say this all the time in our state, that it wraps around all of this work. Right. So our data governance process permeates all aspects of this. So together with our IDEA staff team, the IT data staff is building the new system. That system, because it's CDS, informs our Generate build, because we need to make sure that we're aligned there, that things are flowing correctly. Now, in order for us to build that CDS based system, of course, we were contributing and participating a lot with the CEDS open source community to say, hey, Mississippi is collecting this. It's not unique to Mississippi. We haven't found anything yet that is truly unique to Mississippi. Everybody thinks they have their own little flavor, and it's like, nobody else is doing this. I promise somebody else is doing it. Haven't found one yet. Even if nobody's doing it, they think it's a good idea and they want to do it. So we contributed a lot, and we're engaged a lot with CDS open source community, which informed and facilitated us building out our new system, because we were requesting items that we wanted to add into our new system. But what the trap that we constantly have to keep out of, right, is the IT and data staff owning all of that knowledge, owning all of that work, owning the data processes. It's an easy thing to happen, especially when you're set up like we are, where all of the technical staff are in one office and kind of separated from the program staff. So that has always been a challenge, but one, again, we're wrapping that data governance around us and trying to improve on that every day. And one of the things that I want to point out that we did, which I thought has been extremely beneficial to us with our IDEA data, is that we went through a process kind of separate from our system modernization effort, where we worked through the IDEA, IDC, a data process protocol, because we really wanted to get our current processes documented. And that was a really great toolkit that we worked together with. And that involved the IDEA staff, our Part B data manager, and other staff in special education, and the IT staff. So as we were going through that protocol, it was asking questions that bounced through our process, right? Like, why do you collect this? When is the deadline? How is it reported? Who reviews it? Who approves it? What does that look like? And so we learned a lot about each other working on that protocol, filling that information out together, right? The IDEA staff got a deeper understanding of what happened on the technical side before they said, hey, team, that EDFacts file's coming up. Is it ready yet? Did you hit the button? Did you press the button to run it? Understanding what all goes into that as we prepare for that. And then us understanding what are they looking at when we give them the file to review before we hit the submit button? Like, what kind of anomalies are they looking for? Why is it that? And getting all of that documented, informed how we were building the new system, because we were like, it uncovered issues, right? Like, well, we really don't have a way to determine this, or we really don't have a way to check this. So let's build that into the new system. So that we can improve that process, as we build that out. And so through all of that, that has, really strengthened our ability to use Generate effectively, because we're sharing knowledge around the whole process with each other. They're understanding, they're getting familiar with CEDS terms, that we're using, because we're taking their feedback and bringing that to the open source community. One of our future goals is to get them involved in the open source community and brought in, but right now it's working a little better for us, baby steps, to be the translation layer between the program staff and the more technical staff that sometimes we need when we start talking about data warehouse dimensional models and things like that. And then another thing that Christina had mentioned on a previous slide is increasing the understanding of data systems. So it's so beneficial. So if I had one piece of advice through any data governance improvement, is find a project that you're going to dig in on. And for us, it was working through that IDEA data process protocol. But you can talk a lot about data governance and why it's important, and having people come up and show up to meetings, just a bit like, you got to get your hands dirty. And so jump in on something, dig in on something. We've done course code catalog reviews, pick an area, and that way people really buy into the process, and you'll be amazed at how much happens organically through that process. Right. And I will turn it back over to Dan.
Dan's on mute. Thank you, Deborah. Folks, I've just included a link to our session evaluation. It takes about 4 minutes. We really appreciate, value, and use your input in shaping our future services. Please do click this link and participate, providing feedback. We really appreciate it. I wanted to just reiterate several points and next steps. Travis, if you wouldn't mind skipping to that next slide. We heard, a lot about what the work that you've put in as SEAs to build these systems. We've heard from Christina about, gosh, I think about the history of the IDEA implementation and the staff across SEAs who have been doing this work for so long and the changing roles that they've stepped into, bringing in new staff as well. Kudos to Mississippi, Deborah, for taking advantage of our partner organization, IDC Data Centers, data process protocols, because that's one way to capture that experience and that expertise to guide the work. We feel like this is the beginning of something really great, being able to include these perspectives and those teams then being able to leverage the technical expertise that IT and data teams have to improve service to students overall. On your screen now, just as a reminder, this is one of Christina's slides for next steps for Part B teams, for SEA teams in general. Share insights on issues in the OSC, monitor the OSC when you're preparing your files, provide feedback when you're ready, review Gitbook updates and provide feedback on text to improve data quality, and share improvement ideas via Discord. We're hoping that your teams are going to take these steps, these small steps, and get comfortable in this new ecosystem. And once people build that capacity, then I think we'll see the potential for some of these historic challenges that have always been on the mind of Part B program staff, as Christina mentioned, coming, putting them on the table for solutions for collaborative development. And I think that everyone benefits when that happens. One question just came in. This presentation is going to be available. This is going to be posted on our website. I don't have a date for that yet, but Travis, maybe if you have a timeline for that to share in the chat, that would be helpful. So that's the end of our presentation today, folks. If you have any questions to follow up, you know how to get in touch with us through a CIID TA provider or through some of these new services and communications. Stay tuned. I hope to see some of the Part B staff who I know have joined the call today on our upcoming office hours. Stay tuned for an invitation from that in the coming weeks. Thank you all for joining today and participating with your questions. We look forward to the next time. Take care, everyone.